Okay, picture me. I am in my closet. I have just put on this gorgeous lacy lingerie number. We've got the matching bra and the panties and the garter belt. I look fire. I feel fire. My hair is fire. My makeup is right. I am preparing to walk across the hallway in to meet my partner who is sitting in our intimacy room or ceremony room where he is waiting in meditating in his masculine position to meet me to begin our intimacy session that we have scheduled on the calendar a week in advance for our playtime. Now, I have my robe that's, sliding off my shoulders, and I'm walking confidently up into the room. I open the door slightly. I push it open. I see him, and immediately my body shuts down. I'm talking my stomach starts swirling, my chest starts contracting, and there's just this screaming voice of, I don't want to do this. Yeah, me. This also only happened like 6 months ago. Me, the sexual guru, the online personality who talks about kink and sex all the time. This is me. So today's episode, we are going to be talking about this contradiction of self. This clash between different parts of ourselves around our sexuality and arousal. How can I want something, have scheduled it, like deeply desire intimacy with my partner, and then as soon as I get in the room, my body shuts down? How can this push and pull always exist? And for so many of you, I know that you relate to this experience. I want it, and yet my body is saying, no, 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 no. I should want it. I should want intimacy partner, but every time I get close, I get all these anxious feelings. That's the contradiction. So today we're going to be going through why that happens. We're going to be going through also frameworks for you to be with yourself, to help you understand the different parts that are at play here, and a way through to start beginning to have the more deep and transparent conversations with partners about what is going on in your own parts or around your arousal. Stay tuned. This is a topic that is obviously near and dear to my heart, and it's completely changed my life. So, welcome to another episode of Soul Kink Therapy. My name is Emily Letts. I am a therapeutic dominatrix based in Boulder, Colorado. And Soul Kink Therapy is the show where we explore our parts, our patterns, our kinks, our fetishes, all in the way to access a deeper and more profound sense of liberation for ourselves and our relationships. Oh my God, so good. Okay, for folks who have not listened to Soul King Therapy before, I'm going to give you a really quick explainer of what parts work is or internal family systems. For those of you who have listened to this episode or this podcast before, there's going to be a little bit of review, but it's always so great to refresh our memories. So, in a non-clinical way, let me just say internal family systems is a modality, a therapeutic modality that you can find a practitioner, a licensed therapist to support you with if you're interested in this. You can also do this to yourself as it's a process you can do for yourself. But the idea is that each person is not a unified self. We are a system of parts, each with their own age, their own agenda, their own fear, their own job. And none of these parts are the problem. So for example, if I'm in, I always use this example, if I am in traffic and somebody cuts me off, at first I'm just like, going to traffic, thinking about my day, whatever. And then all of a sudden somebody cuts me off. All of a sudden I get activated. I'm like, you motherfucker, blah, 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 blah. That is basically one of my parts came in and basically took the microphone or took the steering wheel, and like kind of I inhabit that part. When we inhabit a part fully, it's like that's the only thing we can see. We think that person is a bad person, that I was wrong, that I'm a victim, and all of a sudden it becomes your whole world. I'm sure you've experienced this before. And then 15 minutes later, when that part calms down, all of a sudden you're like, why was I so upset? It's because that part, you became blended with a specific part. The idea is that there's two kinds of different parts. There's protectors, These are parts that protect us from pain. So, for example, that anger is usually a protector part. It wants to protect us from some underlying pain. And then there are exiles, and these are the parts that feel pain. And oftentimes, these exile parts are parts of ourselves that are like our inner children. And they are parts of ourselves that have, like, our deep wounding that most likely originated in childhood at some part. We all have this, by the way, every single person. This process was created by Richard Schwartz. The core claim is that there is a seat of consciousness underneath all of our parts. And our seat of consciousness is the calm, curious version of ourselves that's not afraid of any of our parts, that can have compassion to all of our parts. And that healing happens when we are in our seat of consciousness and we can begin to build a relationship with these parts and not suppress them. Does that make sense? So the idea is that, like, when I get really angry, I can then I can be like, "Oh, I'm really angry right now. I wonder what's going on," right? Because I'm speaking from my seat of consciousness. I wonder what's going on. And then I can turn to that part and be curious about it and be like, "Hey, anger. Okay, what anger? What's going on? Like, why are you angry? What are you trying to tell me right now? What are you afraid of? How are you trying to protect me?" There's this whole process that you can do. So anyway, that is a quick and dirty overview of parts work. I now want to put that into the context of arousal, a context of our sexuality, because that's when things start getting really juicy and good. So let's go back to me in the ceremony room with my partner, completely shutting down while I'm fully dressed, ready to play, and also scheduled this out. We were fully expecting, to have our play session this time and day. Now, that moment was a super common moment for me. And it's this idea of, like, I really desire intimacy, and yet I am shutting down. And not only that, I am scared of intimacy. That moment is something that I have been working on for maybe the last 5 years, because it was so common. And actually, looking back, ever since I was probably 20, it was common. Now, I don't have any acute sexual trauma in my past to explain it. I've never had any abusive relationships. So I've always been so confused. Why is my body reacting this way? What is going on? And so that experience became the trailhead for me. It became the opening for me to start trying to understand what parts are at play here, and why this parts war, when two parts are, like, fighting each other, why this is happening. Especially because and it was so frustrating because I've done so much work. I've done so much work on these parts of myself without making much headway. So I want to introduce you to a part that I found that that again changed everything. So basically what happened was, I started with that experience, I started really asking myself, what is this fear trying to tell me? Like, I don't want this. And I was able to track it down to a part of myself that a teacher of mine, Omrapani, calls the archetype of it as the modern woman. So the modern woman is this idea. Again, this is straight up from Omrapani, a teacher of mine. The modern woman is this idea that the modern woman is bred to look and feel sexy as a weapon for status, as a way to gain more status because of, the generations of oppression and all these things. So, like, I'm going to be a CEO, but I'm going to be a sexy CEO. I always have to have sexiness, like, sexiness is part of my tool bag as a way to manipulate the unfair circumstances or whatever, right? But so sexiness is good, but actually, sexiness, the vulnerability of being known intimately, can be threatening. So when my teacher said this to me, everything clicked into place. from like everything clicked in. But I was like, holy shit, that's me. That's me. That's what's been happening. So then by exploring internal family systems and locating this part, I was able to find my part, which I now named Cruella, the part that was told from a young age. It's your job to be powerful. It's your job to walk in a room and have everyone turn and stare at you. It's your job to use whatever looks, use whatever tools you have as a woman to be able to get on top. Because everyone's going to try to drag you down. So it's your job to get on top. It's your job to lead. That's what makes a strong woman. If you're not a strong woman, then you are weak. You are a weak housewife. Like a woman without a career is a housewife and they are weak. These are the messages that I, growing up as a millennial sort of drank down. And also I was fed this idea of get like you can have sex, but don't like sex is fine, but don't let it interfere with your status. Don't let it interfere with your career or your leadership. So it was almost like this sex was this scary thing pushed off to the side that was like, yeah, it's nice. And also the most important thing is being on top. And so what that created was this creature of Cruella who loved getting sexy, loved being witnessed, loved being an exhibitionist, but as soon as like real vulnerability was asked for in intimacy or intimacy that wasn't transactional also, because in my 20s there was a lot of intimacy that was just like, well, I'm horny and you'll do. Right. But there almost this contract of like not getting emotionally involved. So it was like transactional sex. In which case, like, that was fine because I'm not there's no vulnerability here. There's just sort of the physical embodiment of sex. But as soon as I started to get into deep relationships and asking for vulnerability, Cruella would shut it down. And this was so painful to not only myself, but also my partner, who I want to be in devotional love with this man. So it just like completely was foiling me, and it foiled me for so long. When I was able to locate Cruella, start listening to what her fears were, start listening to how she was protecting me, start listening to what her gifts were, how she was aiding my life, all of a sudden she immediately softened. Like immediately. And then immediately I had this other part come through that was there underneath all along, who I now name is Nymph. And she's the part who actually knows how to close her eyes and feel her body and be in this sort of deep feminine, aroused earth, like lust state. She knows like she's fluid. She wants to like hum while touching somebody. She's like almost like animalistic in terms of she just like wants to rub her face all up and down people, and she wants to move her hands all over her body. And this is the part I knew that was there somewhere because I've accessed it from time to time. And I can always tell that Nymph is here because I'll start humming when I start getting like sensual. I'll start humming and that will like almost magnify Nymph. But I was only able to access her once Cruella stepped out of the way because Cruella was her protector because she can feel it's such a vulnerable and intimate part of myself. So I want to give you that framework of like, this has been what's changing my life. Then once I started to meet Nymph, I was starting to meet all of these other parts of myself that had access to arousal too. So for example, I started meeting Sid. Sid is a part of myself who's a dom, who is a sadist, but who's like this giggly, like evil sadist who wants to like punch for men who consent and who are masochists, like wants to punch men in the balls and like giggle hysterically as they get turned on by it. She's like this, like, yeah, I named her Sid because she's the part of in Toy Story. In Toy Story 1, the kid, the villain kid who like is burning toys with a magnifying glass and like cackling, and he's got like braces, if you know that. So that's like this dumb. And she's also like she loves using people. She loves using people for her pleasure. So it's also deeply erotic. So that's the point, is once I was able to meet this protector, name her, again, like really get to know her, to ask her to step aside, I was like met with this cornucopia of arousal states and parts that then I could meet and understand and get to know and build relationships with. And it's been opening up my life in ways I cannot even describe. And this is what I want for you too. So, this is my story. Now, I want to go through a framework to help you do this process for yourself. So, while I was going through my own process and started figuring out, like creating my own theories around this, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm inventing this whole new parts work in sexuality, like I'm a genius. I then went online and realized like this is a full modality already fleshed out and created by a woman named Patricia Rich. So, and her work called self-led sexuality. So I'm going to actually just straight up credit Patricia Rich for this, even though I was doing my own process, but like her work is so good. I've started learning about it recently. So I want to start um, bringing her in and using her framework, because why reinvent the wheel? So her whole point is she begins her work with pointing out consent culture. So consent culture is this idea of, especially like around the Me Too movement, is this idea of just like, well, just ask consent. Just ask consent if you can have sex, or if you want to, like don't rape people, just ask consent, 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 consent. But the problem is with consent culture, there are so many assumptions that a person in an erotic moment that has enough of their parts pointed in the same direction that they have internal consent, that all of their parts are a yes to a sexual experience. And so therefore they can easily say, yes, I would like to have sex, or no, I would not like to have sex. But the reality is, to be able to get to that yes or no takes so much skill and so much awareness of all of your parts that is not taken into consideration when there's education around like quote unquote consent. Because the idea is that inside a specific erotic moment, you could have one part that's excited. You could have one part that's terrifying. You have one part that's performing. You have one part that's checked out. One part is thinking about what you're making for dinner that night. So it's like external consent without internal consent of all your parts produces that exact moment that I felt with Cruella. That exact moment where one part is like, hell yeah, let's do this. We scheduled this. I want to be with my partner. And another moment where it's like, oh my God, get me the fuck out of here. So we need to do this whole process of how do we get internal consent with all of our parts, so that when we go into a sexual scenario, we can actually receive all of the pleasure and be present in the moment without having all of these other voices push up against us and push us out of our bodies. So, to be able to do this, Rich has her 6 Fs. Her 6 Fs. That is a hard thing to say. 6 Fs. And so this really draws on sort of like standard internal family systems access sequence. It's a similar sequence to any therapist using internal family system will help you go through. But it's specifically around erotic parts. So the first F is find. The first thing is just like notice what part is showing up. Is it hesitation? Is it shutdown? Is it a persona that takes over? Just first is just like, oh, I'm feeling shut down. So for me with Cruella, it'd be like, oh, I'm feeling deeply activated and shut down right now. So number 1, find. Number 2, focus. Now, okay, now that I get, oh, I'm feeling shut down right now, then I'm going to focus. Okay, let me just like actually bring my attention towards the shutdown instead of trying to move past it. Because that is what always got me in trouble. I swear to God. I would be like, no, 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 I really want this. Get out of my way part. And I would try to like shove it past. And then I would go into this scenario with my partner, start moving in the steps to have sexy time, and then all of a sudden it would just become a train wreck. And my partner would get sad, and I would be like, "Why is this happening?" And I'd end up on the floor crying. I cannot tell you how many times that has happened to me. Okay, also, like, there's a reason why I teach this stuff is because I have been digging in my own life around this for so long. So, first is find, then is focus. The third F is flesh it out, which means like this is again standard IFS. Get curious about Get curious about that part. Okay, I am shut down. My attention is on it. You have my attention shut down. Then, like, what's your name? Is there an image? Is there a message? Is there a sensation that's coming up that's giving me like just more information? What information is here? So then I would say, like, okay, the information is here. It is screaming at me, I don't want to do this. It's screaming at me, like, get me out of here. Okay, great. I have a message. I have a message. Okay. Now, the fourth F is feel toward. So check out how you feel towards the activation. So, for example, in the moment, like, are you curious about it? Are you irritated? Are you scared of it? Is there another part here that's sort of interacting with that part? So, for example, for Cruella in that moment, for me, I would be like, oh, yeah, I don't know. If the part of me that is feeling like, get me the fuck out of here, I feel very resentful. Because I feel like we are going to hurt my partner. Like, we are supposed to do this. Get your shit together. So I felt really resentful. Okay. So what that means is that there's another part here who feels resentful, which means that I have to actually be with that resentful part to just get a little say, okay, I see your resentful part. Can you take a step? I see you. Thank you for protecting me. I'll be with you in a second. Can you take a step? Can you sit in an internal waiting room so that I can have some time with this shutdown? And then get consent from that part. Okay, how else do I feel towards this part? And the idea is you want to get to a place where you can feel compassionate and curious about this part. How can I feel compassionate and curious about my shutdown instead of all of these other expectations that just kind of create this like crunchy, like confusing snowball of parts? Okay, and finally, and the sixth F is befriend. So then you say, okay, shutdown, what are you protecting? What are you protecting? What are you afraid would happen if you stopped asking me to do this? If you stopped doing this job, if you stopped saying having me on alert and say, get out of here, get out of here. What how are you trying to protect me? And just ask it that question and see what happens. And then the seventh F is fears. Ask directly what it's worried about if you proceed without it being heard. So for me, what I learned is that if I proceeded without being heard, I would somehow lose status. I would somehow lose control, lose it would make me vulnerable for being dismissed, which was the deepest fear of me. It would be make me vulnerable to for being um devalued in any way, shape, or form. So, but to be fair, so this is something that you do for yourself. Like, you can do it in a journaling or meditative process, and you want to do it like try to do it before a sexual encounter. Or, if it happens in a sexual encounter, pausing to do this process, because if you try to override this process, I've tried it so many times, it gets crunchy as hell. Oh my God. So many, I cannot tell you how many train wrecks of a sexy time my partner and I have gone through. And that's one of the reasons why our sexual relationship is so strong, is because we have traveled through hell and back together and found all of our nooks and crannies of what we needed and what we were terrified of and the different parts at play. We mapped it all out together. And so it's like we have each other's back when it comes to this. So if one of us needs to pause to do parts work during a playtime session, even if the other one's super aroused, like, we know that that's what's important. Now, I want to say a note. It's interesting, even though I was doing this work on my parts, It really wasn't until my teacher Omar Pani described modern woman that everything clicked into place. So again, like that's an archetype that he brought forward. It wasn't until that I was like, "Holy shit, that's what's been going on." And then Cruella really came locked into view. And also then once I started meeting Cruella, I started realizing how much she gives to me. She's such a huge part of my business. She's such a huge part of why I like to be on YouTube, why I like to look cute. Like she's such a beautiful part that I would never wanna get rid of, but also she needed a little help when it came to specifically sexual encounters. So good. I get so heated about this. I could talk about this all day. So, I wanna bring this now into the context of people who have a wider how do I describe this? People who have wider scopes of sexual ranges. So I'm talking to my cross-dressers. I'm talking to my kinky folks. I'm talking to my non-monogamous people. I'm talking about people who like whether they want to or not, how their bodies work is like like exploring sexuality outside of the mainstream, more traditional views of sexual beings and sexuality. And one of the reasons why I want to bring this to this community, submissive men, or anything that's like not mainstream, is because the core argument is that the more roles, the more parts and configurations that you have in play that aren't um that aren't what you see in the media, that aren't what you see in mainstream messaging around sexuality, the more internal negotiation is needed and it's actually happening, whether it's conscious or not. So, for example, a dominant part, a submissive part, a part that wants to be witnessed, a part that wants to be anonymous, they aren't contradictions to resolve. Like your cross-dressing part, the part of you that wants to inhabit your feminine if you're in a male body, it's not a contradiction, it's not a problem that needs to be fixed. It's a part of you that needs recognition. It needs to be acknowledged. It wants to be thanked for the process, that the protection it has been giving you, for the pleasure it has been giving you, and it wants to be deshamed. So like the idea is like if you can do this process towards the parts of you that surround your sexuality, you can begin to clear a pathway so that if you're a crossdresser, you can proudly inhabit the cross-dressing space and find partners that want to proudly inhabit that space with you. But if your cross-dressing part is shrouded in shame and secrecy, in these other parts that are protecting you through shame, are protecting you through secrecy, are protecting you through masking and hiding, you're never going to be able to find that full liberation that is possible. Whether or not whatever your partner is going through. So it's like, for me, it is just like such a vital part. And it's also a vital part of really understanding and rooting in our yeses, our ownership of our sexuality. This is what I want. I've talked to all my internal family. I've talked to all my parts. We all want to get down with you right now. We all want to take our clothes off. We all want you to kiss right there and touch right there and lick right there. Yes, please. This has changed my life, and this process, I promise you, it can change yours as well. Especially because there is so much confusion around non-mainstream sexual experiences and parts. I want to end this podcast with, if you need support in this is literally what I do. This is what I'm known for. This is what I do. Please book an initiation session or find a therapist. Find a therapist that is sex positive, that is kink positive. Not all therapists do. In fact, an issue with the therapeutic, especially the licensed therapeutic realm, is that they have been taught to stay away from sexuality so much because it is like the danger zone, because things can get misconstrued and blah, 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 and they don't want to be sued, that a lot of therapists don't know how to bring this conversation in a regulated way with their clients. And so seek out a sex positive, a kink positive person, a therapist who can really do this process with you. So, again, I'm going to end this podcast with a giant like I a giant thank you to Cruella. A giant thank you to my protector. She has kept me she has is the one that has kept me from ever being sexually assaulted because she has been hyper vigilant. She's been so discerning around partners who I literally get in bed with. She is so discerning. I mean, she has kept me safe for so long, and she has also aided my life in so many different ways, and I'm so grateful to her. And I'm so grateful that she went through this process with me to heal, to soften, to step aside so that I can have so much more access to the life force that is my authentic, dripping, yummy, throbbing arousal. That's it for this episode. Thank you so much. Please put in the comments, rate this episode. I want to hear from you. Is this landing with you? Is it not? What's confusing? Give me it all. I'll see you for the next episode.